Let me officially open this press conference. Welcome this afternoon. I'm Ese Twasane, the Media Liaison Officer of the National Sports and Recreation. Today, we called you today because many of you, before the World Cup and even after, they were calling us asking for comment, and we made a promise that we are going to gather you in one venue and respond thoroughly and comprehensively to the questions that were raised. So let me just introduce the people who are sitting on my right. I have with me here the Honorable Minister of Sports and Recreation, Mr. Fikile Mbalula, and the Honorable Deputy Minister of Sports and Recreation, Mr. Oosthuizen. And I also have on my side the DG, Director General of Sports and Recreation, Mr. Alec Moemi. Without wasting any time, I would let Minister Mbalula address.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Deputy Minister of Sports, the Director General, ladies and gentlemen of the media, fellow South Africans, ladies and gentlemen of the media will recall that during the preparation of our senior national men's rugby team, the Springboks, to campaign in the IRB 2015 World Cup Championship, and at the height of this championship, there was a barrage of criticism leveled against the team on pertinent issues ranging from team performance, shape and size of players, the selection of the tried and tested at the expense of young blood, the coach and the leadership of the South African Rugby Union came under torrential attack, the basis of which we can hardly doubt that it's rooted in the fundamental disagreements on sports transformation. It was during the same period the Ministry of Sports and Recreation in South Africa received several formal and informal representations from South African citizens and civil society organizations. These organizations were demanding government intervention to ensure demographic representation in teams and force the hand of the coach to give black players game time. We have also witnessed some unfortunate developments with some sections of the South African populace taking the matter further by openly declaring their support for the All Blacks from New Zealand and declaring their hatred for the Springbok team for reasons they stated. It is a matter of historical record that a group calling itself the Agency for the New Agenda took SARU and the Minister of Sports and Recreation to court as respondents in that application for a court interdict. In the midst of all this drama and protest, we intervened and appealed to all South African compatriots to support our national team in line with our constitutional injunction and direction from the National Development Plan to promote nation building and social cohesion through sport. In the same vein, we acknowledge that the public concerns about lack of transformation in our sporting codes, rugby included, was and will continue to have a plausible justification, and it is a matter we assist with at all material times. To this end, I made a commitment to meet with all structures of civil society and individuals who are keen to engage constructively in the interest of the sport and South Africa. I promised that I will specifically meet with COSATU in the Western Cape in order to discuss their petition submitted to our office and also share with them the concrete steps and strategic interventions in our quest to transform and change the South African sporting landscape for good and for better. In this melange of great of expectations for immediate striking outcomes and denial of the South African reality that our present is inextricably linked to our past, and in this historical conjuncture, it is only us who have the rare opportunity to chart a new progressive trajectory for peace and development through sport. Within this context in mind, ladies and gentlemen, what we have surmised is that the message we have been driving home is not getting through to all. This in turn has meant that the discourse and robust debates are informed by the policy choices we have made as the current administration. There is no better way to address this gap other than to remind you of the foundations we have laid and concrete steps we have taken in order to achieve transformation goals. In November 2011, Sport and Recreation South Africa convened a sector-wide national sports and recreation Indaba with a view to retrace the road traversed since the unification of sport in our country, hither year two. The Indaba's purpose was to take stock of how far we have, and having done that, chart a new futuristic pathway for the fundamental transformation of sport in South Africa. It is now a matter of historical record that the Indaba adopted 3 significant and watershed documents. 1, the National Sports Plan. The plan contains the Transformation Charter as a formal policy guiding transformation in South Africa. This charter has been adopted by the entire sports sector of our country and has an accompanying multi-dimensional scorecard. The charter put emphasis on the key pillars on which transformation in sport should be measured. The pillars include access, demographic representation, governance, employment equity, preferential procurement, funding, institutional culture, etc. The scorecard is then utilized as an effective tool and decisive instruments to measure the targets that are set against these pillars in a scientific way to determine progress or lack thereof. The whole sports plan, including the Sports Transformation Charter and its accompanying scorecard, were subsequently adopted by the South African government at a cabinet meeting of 18 May 2012. The plan, the charter and scorecard were assented to by the sport movement at the Indaba through the signing of the declaration by the National Sports and Recreation Department, all federations, and South African Sports Olympic Committee, SASCOC. This signaled a public commitment by the sports movement to accelerate the implementation of effective, impactful, and sustainable transformation plans with measurable, visible, and actual outcomes. Resolutions that are currently being implemented, monitored, and evaluated in respect of each federation. In our quest to deepen the transformation drive, in May 2012, the Ministry of Sport and Recreation appointed a Sports Transformation Commission, aptly called the Eminent Persons Group, on transformation in sports to advise the ministry on measures necessary to quicken the tempo and effect meaningful transformation, as well as changing the sporting landscape. The EPG, through its secretariat, also administers the scorecard as a tool to monitor and assess progress on an annual basis. Since its appointment, the EPG has released 2 sport transformation status reports called the Sport Transformation Barometer. The first of these reports was a pilot study to establish a baseline study on the 5 biggest codes in our country: netball, football, cricket, athletics, and rugby, the so-called Sports Big 5. This allowed the EPG to set and recommend targets over a medium-term period to be met by these 5 sport federations for transformation in their codes. The second report, released earlier this year, sought to establish baselines for the 11 codes. The next Sport Transformation Barometer will now begin to track the performance and meeting of targets or lack thereof of the Big 5, and also set targets for the 11 others, thus also paving way for the signing of transformation agreements with the 11 other sporting federations. These reports are a culmination of the EPG annual transformation audit. The transformation agreements further stipulate targets set for each sporting code, compliance requirements, and punitive measures on failure to meet the targets. These punitive measures are progressive depending on the extent of non-compliance with provisions of the charter and not meeting the set and agreed targets. The punitive measures include, among others, suspending or withdrawal of government funding, withdrawal of government recognition to the National Federation in terms of Section 10B. Such a decision will mean that the National Federation will be deregistered and that such a decision will be published in the Government Gazette. Revocation of the National Federation authority to host and bid mega events. Withdrawal of the Federation's opportunity to be awarded national colors. terminate the existing 5-year agreement in writing due to non-compliance, request the Minister in writing to consider issuing a directive in terms of Section 13 of our Act, as RSA deems it fit and appropriate. This information has been shared with all federations and South African public. However, some elements with sinister agendas mischievously ignored this empirical evidence of what is being done and what is to be done. The measures put in place are not perfect, and we on our part have not made such a claim. Like all social processes, there are twists and turns, weaknesses and challenges. The critical question is how we respond to the aforementioned in a decisive way. It is our understanding that all federations are on course towards the realization of the set targets. It is also our understanding that as they prepare for all their games at club, provincial, and national level, be it women or men sides, they are at all material times cognizant of their commitment and the consequences thereof. We are under no illusion about the daunting challenge presented by the fact that 84% of under 18-year-old South Africans are black and part of the historically most disadvantaged group in the country. And only 16% is either colored, white, or Indian. This sad reality is our foremost preoccupation as the leadership of the sports movement as we make the case for sport and motivating for shaping the longer-term future of our sporting codes and athletes. We hope all appreciate that South Africa is a signatory to the Olympic Charter, and this prohibits governments from interfering with team selection. Further, the National Sports and Recreation Act contains no empowerment provisions to enable the minister to interfere in this specific matter of team selection and appointment of coaches. We are all agreed within the sporting movement that transformation is a strategic and moral imperative and therefore a non-negotiable. Furthermore, it has now become a necessity and imperative than ever before due to the above highlighted fact that 84% of under 18-year-old South Africans are black and part of the historically disadvantaged. We are on a daily basis confronted by recalcitrant relics from the past and tendencies whose ulterior motives are to dilute or derail the transformation agenda. I can say with good measure that we are dealing with them and they will never defeat the march and drive to a non-racial, non-sexist and democratic sporting codes in South Africa. We are delivering sport under conditions that were not chosen by ourselves. We have accepted the conditions as given, and we are prepared to join hands with all South Africans whose purpose and objective is unity, social cohesion, and nation building through sport. Having said that, I wish to address now the issue with regard to rugby in specific terms. We have signed an agreement with rugby on the 18th of May, 2015. In the same place that we are at, which is Olympic House, this year. I'm under no illusion that when we went to the Rugby World Cup, there was no way that SARU, having explained to you the background, and in particular rugby would have actually met the targets that they've agreed to of 50-50 in terms of the demographics when it comes to the national team. But in terms of our own approach to transformation, it is organic, it is all-inclusive. And I wish to state on record that we are not, the people who are undermining transformation in the country. We expect SARU, upon appointment of coaches and so on, to ensure that this policy that they've binded themselves to and they've signed of government is implemented. And the timeframes that we have set for ourselves is a period of 5 years, which annually it is actually evaluated. And with regard to the question of time given to players in terms of playing, it is in our interest, not only rugby but also other specific codes, that players that are selected should be given game time. And the issue of merit has been raised outside the qualification of what needs to happen in terms of the selected players. All players who are selected to play for the national teams, in our view, are players that are selected on merit, and they too deserve the right to actually play for the national team. Like we have stated in our report, the minister does not appoint coaches, and the minister does not determine the style of play of the team, including whether you play good rugby or you play bad rugby. That is the call of the appointed coach. SARU, it is the federation that appoint, hire and fire coaches. And I've got no report on my table that says SARU have appointed any coach for the next 4 years. I've got no such report. Like reports that were made before the World Cup that it has already been, a decision had already been made that a coach has been appointed. Upon inquiring, there was no such a decision. And I think that it is the SARU board that is going to take a decision. My understanding is that any board, before it take a decision, it make an evaluation of an individual. How did that individual fare as a coach who have been appointed? Peter de Villiers was a coach of the national team. He was fired, or his contract was not renewed after the World Cup because of what SARU knows for itself that the coach would have not delivered. That will apply to Heineke Meyer and to all other coaches that will actually come. And that is my understanding that SARU, when it meets, it will take a decision with regard to what the coach obtained. But the coach must be alive to the agreement that SARU has actually signed in terms of policy of government. Failure for SARU to undertake that particular agreement and implement it, they will then face the consequences that I've listed, that I've actually read here. The period between May and the World Cup, I was very clear that these demographics and the issues we are addressing here, in terms of the national team, it will not be totally reflective. Because at a given time in South Africa, we stopped everything with regard to transformation and we clamored around quotas. And quotas became the beginning and the all when it comes to transformation. And those quotas were counterproductive. Because what it meant is that if the quota says you select 3 players, it means you'll only have 3 players, even if on the bench you've got 5 who can perform very well. Because the quotas say 3, all those who undermine transformation have misused the quotas to undermine the capabilities of the players. I'm fully aware of the frustration of the players, and the sports Indaba emphasized that we must not withdraw the quotas, but scientifically, we have emphasized the question of the targets and at the same time the scorecard to ensure that we move transformation forward. Now, transformation is not negotiable in this particular instance. I don't expect in the next 5 years or the next year to still be grappling with the question of who must play, who must not play. The next World Cup is taking place in the next 5 years or so. And I expect that the Springbok team should be ready, not yesterday, by now, in order to continue to compete with their counterparts and continue to put their strength in the test matches they will play and continue to play good rugby. And that is what is important for me. So I want to thank all South Africans who did take part in the campaign to support the national team. And it is important because we are compatriots and we are patriots. And whoever who takes part, I'm an antithesis of a racist notion that look at transformation from a perspective of a dominance of one race over the other. I am a proponent of what it is progressive, which means the demographics must be leveled, the playing field must be leveled. And for us to achieve that, even in the long term, is not to enhance tokenism. It means we must expand our developmental and massify our developmental approach, which is interconnected in the context of the national sports plan that I have adopted, and that is a policy of this government. It means sport must be played at every corner of this country, at every school. And that is why I've made a case in cabinet that I need money to build infrastructure so that kids can play rugby. The majority of African black players who are in the rugby national team have not gone through the organic school sport program in the disadvantaged communities. To play for the Springboks, you must be in the top class of the 40 schools in the country that produce. If you are not there, you will never be seen, your talent will never be recognized. And talent in South Africa is in every corner of the nation. And that is why, if the question of the infrastructure, social infrastructure, is a problem, we must address that. We must address the question of development. We must expand on the grassroots level in terms of our approach for sport at the national level, in particular rugby. I'm zooming in on rugby because it's as though nothing has been done. And it's as though we went to the World Cup, and at the same time, we are generally taking a lackluster approach, and we're digging our heads in the sand when it comes to transformation, and we don't care. And generally, we are in the pockets of so and so. We are not in the pockets of anybody. We've got policy that is guiding us and the principle. Which policy we have been taken on, particularly by other groups within society. The same as there are people who've got no feeling, who've got a feeling that the Springboks is not enough representative. There are other groups in our society who say the policy we are implementing must be challenged. It's not only this agency, it is also the AfriForum that also took us to the rugby, took us to the International Court of Justice to say that we are tampering with, the system in the country in terms of the composition of the national team. The Freedom Front Plus complained to the High Commissioner of the British High Commissioner. We defeated all of those, and to say that this is the policy that binds us going forward. And that policy, it is an injunction that commits us to the constitutional framework as a country. So there's a lot of interest in relation to this matter, but we've got a policy in place that must be implemented. If you ask me, 5 years to come, and I'm still Minister of Sports, what happened to your policy? And you ask me in the next couple of years, what happened to the policy and the next World Cup? And why didn't you implement all the things that you said you will implement when a federation fails to implement, and you say rugby has not done that? You will be justifiable. When I came here with rugby and everybody signed this agreement, that day we're dealing with FIFA, just like today FIFA is still among us. You never took interest in this question of transformation and what the minister is doing. I even said that day, yeah, I'm clear when the Springbok go to the World Cup, we will not achieve these demographics. If some of you journalists say I'm lying, say it today. I didn't lie. I said it 18th of May. You wake up at the heat of the World Cup and say that, what is the minister doing about transformation? Because transformation to you and some of the sections of our society is only an issue when there is a World Cup. I've been grappling with this issue since I was minister. I established and went to the sports movement in Daba. Came out of that, adopted a comprehensive approach, which approach has brought us here. I've been in this hall where I released the survey on the baseline that said that 84% of this nation, people who play sport, it is Africans. And 16% of that, it is blacks, in particular colors and Indians. And the majority are outside. And it is here where I addressed the impediments with regard to non-transformation of other sporting codes, rugby and cricket. And it is here where I address the survey in relation to how far have we gone with cricket. And by that time, already the World Cup had come, the new coach was appointed, and that coach had already made a plan that says that I will bring in some of the older players in my plan to go to the World Cup. When I raised the issue of Victor Medfield and all other players, not now, when everybody's a hero, that time I was attacked. I know nothing about sports, just like some other people who are analysts who are condescending, saying that I know nothing about rugby. I don't need to know rugby to understand what needs to happen. You don't need to be a shipping owner to drink alcohol. You just get there and get drunk because it is alcohol that you drink. I understand what needs to be done. And that I needs to be done is policy. Whether Mbalula dies today or tomorrow, there is policy. Whether Mbalula is here or not, there is policy that the next minister must undertake. And that policy has got time frames. When I raised the issue of time frames and 5 years, Yuri Leroux was here, the president of SARU was here, we were in the same hall. Nobody said to me, in the World Cup, how will the squad be represented? I addressed COSATU, Western Cape in particular, about that question and raised with them that this is no possibility that when we go to the World Cup, this would have actually been realized. And we went to the World Cup, almost 8 or 9 players of color were part of the squad. And most of them did not actually play. Now you presuppose that I'm not concerned. Not only them, I'm also concerned about generally players who've got talent equally who did not have an opportunity to play. I don't select, when I conclude, before I give you a chance to ask questions, I don't select players. I don't select players, I don't coach. If Shakes Mashaba is selected as a coach, I support the coach. If Henneke Meyer is selected, I support the coach. The Minister of Sports doesn't do that. The Olympic Charter will not allow me to do that. Immediately I do that, it will equal to interference, and then that sporting code will then be disqualified and banned from participation globally. I don't do that. I've got policy that must be implemented. And when I raise the issue of SARU, I raise the issue to say that none of you have raised an issue with SARU. You have raised an issue with the minister as though I don't have policy. It is SARU that appoints coaches. It is SARU on the 15th that will determine whether a coach is employed or not employed. It is SARU. Why can't you ask, why are you not fighting SARU when they write open letters to you, like Gareth Cliff? I don't write open letters. I relate with SARU and I'm going to meet with them. They must brief me, either before or after that meeting. How have you resolved issues and how are we going? But we've got an agreement here that they know that they must implement. The Minister of Sport doesn't make a determination about who must be the coach of the national team. If I do that with rugby, I must do that with all sporting codes. And that's it. I don't sit in a panel. None of my people, the deputy minister or anybody, sit in that panel. Whether the coach is black, purple, or yellow, that coach must implement what it is policy. Even black coaches have come into SARU. They've had a difficulty to have maximum of the demographics addressed. We have to go backwards and look as to what is the problem. Peter de Villiers was the coach of the Springboks. He did not have the latitude of many players. I was in New Zealand. He didn't play all those blacks. They were all in the bench. They were all in the bench. We were there. But I listened to him on newspapers. He's a good analyst. And then he speaks about the World Cup and all of that. And I still believe he's a good coach. It's not about the color. You cannot just rock up and say that Mbalula must play. That process must undergo a particular process. You don't rock up at the World Cup and start to fill the squad. That process must be seen now. We're going to the next World Cup in the next 5 years. The players who are going to play in the next World Cup must find their expression in our national team now, in terms of this agreement between us and SARU. They must not be included because the populace is crying. And if the coach, in the midst of that, doesn't do the right thing, we are going to take steps not against the coach. Because the coach has not appointed himself, he was appointed by the board. And that board, today, it is a good board because it is only the coach who is a problem, but the board is not actually being taken on in terms of its decisions. What does the board do when it comes to decision? When I arrived here as sports minister, SARU was led by black people and Africans. And all those black people who stood their ground and fought within SARU, they were all either expelled, others even died, because they stood for the truth. this transformation. And I know when I'm seated here, I'm not a fool, or I don't need scientific person who will come from the Americas or from heaven to come and tell me that there are people who don't like transformation. And they think that rugby must just become something else. I'm very clear, they are there. But they are like ghosts, you can't touch them. You know, they are like thin air, you can't see them. You can't point at them and say that Kisi Khwaba doesn't like transformation. If you say that against them, they will charge you and all of that. When our people raise those particular issues, it is civil society, they've got a right to raise that. I'm not against COSATU for raising what they see that is right. AfriForum, I've responded to them. You can never say that you don't like transformation, and what we are doing to accelerate transformation is not important for the benefit of South Africa. It is important, but there must be policy that guide us for implementation. And today I'm clarifying that policy again and again. As we went to the World Cup, we never stopped. As we come back from the World Cup, we never stopped. We are continuing with transformation. And I'm not saying for all the criticism that people have raised in relation to the slowness of transformation, it is incorrect. Probably if they did not raise their voice, we would not be here today. Because the time when everything was lax and nobody raised the fundamentals, nobody would have filled this hall. For the first time I see media, I'm told we are even live on television. That shows the importance of the issue that we are dealing with. But when we address the measures that we are going to take, and I keep raising this issue, that pay attention to what we do so that you support us and hold us accountable. When you criticize, you hold us accountable to what we have done, so that you know and you are able to keep track. When I invite the media and sports journalists to transformation, they think it's a razzmatazz party, and they don't come. And some of them, they don't come, they criticize me in their rooms because you guys are powerful. You can sit at home and write what you like. You don't want to be judged, you don't want to be checked, and then write what you like. But you don't come when we want to engage you. I've long started the journey of transformation. I've long been insulted about it for right reasons, and I've taken it. And we are not knocking doors. We then decided with everybody that there is policy. I know even after today, there will be people who say that that is a wrong policy. We will take it where and where. Take this policy if it is wrong and test it at the Constitutional Court, because we are consistent with the constitution of the country in terms of what we want to achieve. Don't take us to The Hague. Take us here. Where is it? Next to Johannesburg, Randfontein. Constitutional Court. The Hague, they won't understand what we're doing here. You know, the coach of New Zealand says that before the semi-final, he pitied our coach because there those guys are dealing with quotas, but he was quick to withdraw because I was about to jump on his neck that he must deal with these problems of Maori and all of that in New Zealand and leave us here so that we deal with our problems. But he withdrew quickly. You know, this notion that all in New Zealand, it started well, and all of a sudden, because there's a lot of black people in the New Zealand national team, it is all well. No, it's not the case. There is a developmental strategy that has worked there, and it was embraced by all. Here in South Africa, if you are a talented black player, and don't make a mistake, once you get injured, you go to hospital, that's when we forget about you. You will never come back. The next time when we inquire about you, we are going to be told you are a drunkard. You are a drunkard or you take cocaine. You will never come back. I don't know how many drunkards we have, but they've actually come back. But that's what we will be told. You will never come back, you will never be assisted to come back and continue to play. That's what actually happened. Now, we have put the measures, and we've got policy that must be adhered to. So if that policy is not adhered to, we will be able to do all the things that I'm saying. We have never tested that against any national team in South Africa. And in the next 5 years, which is the agreement, we will be able to test that. If next year, rugby is not able to transform in terms of their own agreement we will be able to show them that you are not able to transform, and therefore these are the steps we are basically taking against you. You asked me about the World Cup. I will tell you, like I told you on the 18th of May, that it is not possible. That journey for an effective implementation of transformation in South Africa has just begun. And we need everybody to be on check and everybody to take part in that particular program and ensure that we adhere to this policy that has been adopted by all for its effective implementation. Failure to implement it, we will be able to take action. So I am saying to you, we are not here because there is an accident. We are here precisely because there is a journey we are traversing, and over and above that, we've got absolute clarity about what we want to achieve. And that is not going to come out of a process in which it is suck thumb. We have actually worked on a scientific approach, and we've got a buy-in of everybody. Everybody have signed, including SARU, to this commitment and this agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I remember also on the 18th of May, we were here, we were talking about transformation. There were heads of all top 5 federations. And when I asked that the floor takes questions, no one asked anything on transformation, but people asked on FIFA. Hopefully now we are going to open a round of questions, and there won't be that until the last round. So I'm going to have 5 rounds of questions with 4 sets of questions in each. And I would really wish that any question that is not related to transformation or anything that you saw on the invite for here will be asked on the last round. So I will take the first round, and they will be fielded to all the people on the panel. Thank you. I'll take the first round now. Okay, I'll take the first one, the back.
Just what steps can you guys take if there's no adherence to the transformation process from, because you're talking about South Africa, you just focus on South. If they don't adhere to the policies, what steps and action can the sports ministry take?
Okay, the second one. There's a question here.
I'm Sbu Mjigeliso from Times Media. Minister, you were very decisive in dealing with Cricket South Africa when they had corporate governance issues. However, when it comes to South African rugby and its transformation issues, it appears as though you are dealing with them with very kiddish gloves. Is it because you reckon human capital is not as important as money, in the sense that with Cricket South Africa you were very, very firm? I remember the Nicholson inquiry into corporate governance. However, with South African rugby failing as yet to come even close to that 50% target, the final important match of the World Cup against New Zealand fielded only 4 black players in the match 23, and the 31-man squad only had 8 black players. Could you respond to the difference in the way you've dealt with the 2 organizations?
Okay, the third one. Yeah, at the front.
Me, Ojim from E-News. Minister, are you still confident that you can still reach that 50% representation come 2019? And you mentioned the punitive measures for SARU if they don't meet the targets in the next 4 years. But what about the provincial teams and the Super Rugby teams? Where are whoever the coach is going to be in 2019 going to get the black players if they're not playing Super Rugby and Currie Cup Rugby as well?
Okay, I will take the last one of this round. In the absence, I'll have to go back to the minister. Oh, there.
Mr. Minister, Christo Buchner from Beeld. Hanneke Meyer was quoted over the weekend saying that the ANC was quite happy with the way he performed at the World Cup. Were you one of those people that congratulated him on his performance there, or what was your feeling on the way he used black players in this tournament?
Okay, thank you so much. I will just allow Minister to respond.
First, I did congratulate the coach. I did congratulate the team. I was at the dressing room. I was there before they left to wish them well. And that is what I do all the time. And I don't know about the ANC, but I think the ANC did issue the statement to say the Springboks did well. And I want to reiterate now, they did well. And I salute that bunch of Springbok players. It would have been a bunch of winners if they won the World Cup, but they are definitely not losers. I'm proud of them. They were not a statistic in the World Cup. They fought a difficult World Cup, and they never gave up. And from Japan to the last match, I'm not going to discuss the technique of performance, whether it was Blue Bulls rugby, SCOP, or whether it was a fluid, nice to look at rugby. I'm not going to discuss that. It's not my call. I got a call of patriots that I saw who were prepared to die and make us proud. And I went there and I saw them. And I told them that it's only a fool that will say that they didn't see what you did at the World Cup. The rest of South Africa, majority, we are not monolithic, we are not homogeneous, we don't think alike. There are other people who are pairing all the time the lose of the Springbok in the World Cup to transformation. Whenever the Springbok lose, I know the debate wherever they are is about transformation. And they never gave this team a chance, including to get to the semis. And that is the Springboks I know. The fighting spirit, the patriots. When I said those burkies can veg, I meant it. Hulle burkies van hulle praat Afrikaans, majority of them. But that is not a burkie team. And I was patronizing my patriots for their fighting spirit. Because they can praat in Afrikaans and do things that not even New Zealand can understand. And I'm saying that because that is the dominant language that the team understand. And I didn't say that to mean that I condone anything. And in South Africa, we've got 11 languages and Afrikaans is part of them. And I think those people who were there are actually patriots and South Africans that we must embrace, not only embrace because they are part and parcel of our country. And they represented us well in the World Cup. And I'm proud of them, and the rest of South Africa is proud of our team. Now, coming to the question of what steps did we take, will be taken. I've mentioned those steps that will be taken if you don't adhere to transformation. One of which, deregister the team, will not support a bid for mega events, and then we will withdraw national colors. This agency that took us to court said to us, among others in court, withdraw national colors. The reason why we were a respondent is because they knew once we could do that as government, the Springboks will not be recognized in the World Cup. So you participate in the World Cup by virtue of your country. And that is what is important. So if you fail to transform, these are the consequences. And I've repeated that, and I'm still repeating it even now. And I've said that on the 18th of May 2015, before the World Cup. Now, with regard to SPU, the question of transformation, kid gloves, there are no kid gloves. I don't understand. How do you understand the question of kid gloves? There are no kid gloves. I said on the 18th of May, when we signed an agreement, that the Springbok national team going to the World Cup will not have been able to achieve the targets that we're signing here today. I said it here. So how do I now, because of the World Cup, change the story and behave like a maverick? Because the people are fighting, no, I'm changing, like a chameleon. No, we don't go with the mood and the populist views. We go with the principle. And that is fundamental. And what is that principle? I want to repeat it again for you to understand. We agreed with SARU on 50-50. And in that approach, it is organic. Organic means something that is rudimentary, that starts from the bottom. Meaning, we don't only look at the national team, OG. we look at the team and its body, which is correct what you are raising. You are looking only on the national team, which is the mistake we've done in the past. We forget about Vodacom, we forget about the Currie Cup because we also forget about the franchises, because that's where the players are going to come from. Most of the players that are selected for the national team are coming from the franchises who play for the Springboks and sign in the contracts. Our approach here is to say we look at it organically and holistically, that this franchise, and at the same time, in terms of developmental work, starting from the Craven Week, how do we affirm and ensure that the talented players are actually affirmed and are able to play in the elite side of rugby in South Africa? That is what is important. Otherwise, if you look at the Springboks and you look at 7 players and 3 players and all of that, you think that is the issue. That is not the issue. The issue is that we must ensure organic development, and that development must be followed. We have even addressed the question that we've got a challenge in South Africa that development is skewed. And is skewed in the sense that I can tell you now, all the black players who are playing and donning the national jersey of the Springboks are not coming from Soweto Kamogelo High School or Reamuetsi in Botshabelo or in Zinginzingi. They come from St. Albans or King's College. If you didn't go there, you wouldn't make it. Makayantini would have never been this Makayantini you sing and sleep about if Steve Chwete didn't take an initiative to take him to Dale College. He wouldn't have made it with all his talent. He went there and saw it and took him. Why in Dale College is because there is coaches, there is proper nutrition, there is proper follow-up. That it is not there in public schools. Where is talent going to come from? Who looks after the kids at school in terms of the sport that they play there? The reason why the majority of blacks master football is because we know it even before we are born. We don't have to go to a school or an academy. We know football, we can play football and all of that. But those academies at the end should be schools, because at schools, rugby is played. And then at schools, majority of the schools that are on the periphery play the sport of football and they don't play rugby. And that is the case. And we need to address that in our developmental trajectory and in our own approach. If we want to address the issue of the demographics with the selection of 7 players to meet the targets, we will not have addressed development. Because if all those players, we can find them and then enforce the coach that is coming that play them every day, and that's it. No, the approach here is that we need to work organically on the most talented players, nurture them, give them an opportunity. Let's take Andre Pollard, the captain of the under-20 national team, which won the Rugby Under-20 World Cup, right? He was actually taken and became the best fly half of the Springboks at the age of 20. At the age of 20, to play for the Springboks in the World Cup. Right? Fantastic development, great. Is there a possibility that can happen for all the other players in the system? That is possible. But Andre Pollard, it's not the question of his race, he's a talented player. It's in his genes. He played rugby whilst he was still a boy. And then he was nurtured, followed at school, and even now. That is the best future captain of the Springboks going forward. All right? The fact of the matter is that our approach to development must equally understand how are we able to nurture talent, preserve it, and ensure that it is actually defended going forward. Now, if administrators are sleeping on the job and then are not able to make follow-up, and then you don't put developmental structures in place that are going to ensure that these kids are able to come through the ranks, it will never happen. And all what people fight about in the boardrooms is this policy of transformation. It will never happen. The question is, now in our agreement with SARU, which is very scientific, and you can have it, it can be distributed to all media houses. It is very scientific in the sense that it has been even radical to say at Vodacom level, quotas must be enforced. It's not me, that is SARU on its own decision. You know, that is what it took before the World Cup already. And it was on Bild newspaper, front page. And that is when the Freedom Front took us to court. Already at that level, quotas have been implemented, not Minister of Sport, because it has got to be organic. It doesn't start, you know, with a few black players at the national level, who most of the time, some of them are not even given gameplay. Let's take all the players who were selected, 8 of them, where do they come from? Why do you argue that they are quota players when they play week in and week out in their teams? Loazim Vovo play every day for Sharks. He was not selected like Alec, who plays rugby for extramural activity, as an extramural activity, and he doesn't even play it well. He was selected. You know, when President Mugabe was implementing the policy in Zimbabwe to accelerate land redistribution, he even killed the national teams there. And then all of a sudden, we had to go and find blacks everywhere. Don't quote me on that one. It will be like Kenya again. And then the national team. So it's a process to construct that national team. Zimbabwe is still struggling till today because the most talented players left Zimbabwe because that was the case. But the fact of the matter in South Africa, we are not doing that. We are not saying that those who want to leave because they want to play for weak teams like Japan and Ireland, they can leave. But we are saying, participate in the system and let us all participate, black and white, and build rugby as a national team. I will never agree that a talented black player must be selected because he's black ahead of a talented white player. I will not, which is what has happened in this country. Talented black players have not been selected because it is said they are quota players. They are not selected. But in their teams, Siako Lisi, where does he play? Stormers, week in, week out. Selection into the national team, is it favor? Is it not merit? It's merit. It means once you put him there, he can play in his own position anytime, unless if he's injured. Now, these are frivolous things that are raised by opportunists and make it a national debate, you know? Whereas the fundamental issue that confronts us, it is not the superstructure, it's not the phase. It is the question of deeply inside, how do we transform the system? How do we transform the system? And OG, like you say, transforming the system means starting from the schools, means that we decentralize at the base level, means that at Vodacom, at CARICAP, all those players that are talented must find expression somehow. The reason why I supported the academy in the Eastern Cape, 35 million was allocated by Lotto, right? The reason why, as a minister, first I supported that is because that academy, Saru said to me, is going to focus on the development of black African players in the Eastern Cape. Because majority of African black players in the Eastern Cape who are now in rugby and the franchises come from the Eastern Cape. But they cannot be retained there because the best are in Johannesburg, are in Pretoria, and are in Natal. And that is why I supported that academy, because there is talent. So there is no truth in saying that there is no talent. How many players in the Boland and everywhere else? There are other provinces where rugby is not played at all among our African color and all of that. There are. And how do we get there and develop rugby? But in those provinces, the other day I went to Mpumalanga with the Pumas. They did not even see that I'm Minister of Sport. Right? And the majority of the players there who played the sport of rugby, you find one black player and all of that because he came from a multiracial school and he was found there and then he was frog jumped into the team because of his talent. But the majority of some of the provinces do not play rugby, you know. In reality, our developmental approach says to us, all schools must be able to play rugby and to realize development. In the next 10 years, we will stop this wrangling and philosophical discussion about whether there is transformation or no transformation. And what I want to say with our approach is that transformation is not negotiable. So there is no kid gloves with regard to rugby. There is no kid gloves, there is policy. I hear often that people say that, Minister, why does he call That is frivolous. It's a nice to say. It's a populist statement. Why does he not say Springboks are a bunch of losers, but he's quick to say Bafana Bafana are a bunch of losers? How do I call a team like the Springboks a bunch of losers unless I'm a clown? How do I start calling such, gigantic, firefighters losers? When people came out in the World Cup and won a bronze, and then I call them losers, how do I call them? If I want to please the nation, I can look like a clown. I'm not in competition with Trevor Noah in this job. I am a minister of sport. I'm not a clown, or I am not a comedian. I'm not in competition with David Kau or with anybody. I can't do things because people say, why are you not saying the first game of Japan? Why is the minister quiet? I said, this is just the beginning. If South Africa could not qualify and went out at the group stages, they would have qualified to be called losers. That's what losers are, right? But they went back, gathered themselves, fought back very hard, came back. I missed knowing that some sections or people are criticizing us. So there is no kid gloves. There is policy that we are following. And we've been following that since we came into this portfolio. We had a survey, baseline survey. I was in this room with one journalist on Metro FM called Robert Marawa. He was chairing when we were releasing the results of the survey, right? And then today is one of the proponents who says that I'm not accelerating transformation in South Africa. I'm treating the Springboks with kid gloves. And I wish to tell him that I'm not treating Springboks with kid gloves. He was here. He saw for himself the work that we're doing. He uses that platform to insult us, including to say that we are good at organizing, conferences, there will be no progress and all of that. There is progress in terms of what we're doing, right? It's a popular platform. Abuse it, not to address fundamental issues, and so on. I'm not afraid to go to any platform. I'm ready to go to any platform and address myself to any platform. That is my job. Unless if this ministerial position would have been a private property, no. My point of not going there, it had everything to do with the content, because I raised the issue. I'm not addressing issues of performance. I can't be Kaunda or Lawrence Parker, the room dividers. I'm not an analyst. I'm a minister of sport. If you want to discuss transformation with me and policy of transformation, call me to the studio. I'm not Tando Manana. I'm not paid for analyzing. I'm paid for implementing policy. I've designed the policy. And that is what I'm doing. And I differed with them on that particular point. All of a sudden, I'm told that I didn't want to go. I will never run away. That is my job. That will be dereliction of duty. It is my job to go and address issues and attend to them. But I will never agree to be looted and molested, vandalized, and then accept that, no, this is the way to go. I agree. The sentiments that people raise, not only sentiments about transformation, they are correct. 20 years. And the reflection of it is on us, because certain things were not done. This issue was not addressed the way we are aggressively attending to it now. There's never been rules that if you don't transform on the basis of this, you will be attended to. We, for the first time, have introduced that. So that if SARU does not transform and abide by what it has agreed, we will be able to attend to them. We should be able to attend to them. If we don't attend to them, you, the masses, should be in a position to remind us about that. And that is what is fundamental. I've got no business to defend non-transformation when government itself have adopted the policy on transformation in terms of what needs to be done. And I think that the question of the performance of the team, I've actually addressed it in the context of congratulating the team. I did congratulate the coach, and the ANC did also congratulate the coach for job well done in terms of winning the teams. I did. It is my job to encourage the team to do well. I've started that long before the team left. When they lost to Japan, I was a lone voice. And I stood my ground that the Springboks will come back. It's my job, because we need a winning nation. We need this nation to continue to win and to make those young people who represent our nation to continue to believe. That has been the fundamental question for me, and going forward in terms of the World Cup. So there's no secret about that. But if you want to misconstrue the support for the coach at the World Cup to meaning that we want the coach to remain, it will be wrong, because that's not our call. It is the call of SARU. There's no ANC that said Henneke Meyer must remain as the coach. Neither did I, as the minister, say so. I've never said that. Even if they can appoint Gert Oosthuizen and relieve him to become a coach, I'll support him. Because I need to support him. He's got no capabilities to win us any World Cup. Yeah. So I will support that. It is my job, you see. But if tomorrow a federation decides that a coach doesn't serve as well in his capacity, I can't say no, keep him. Why? And the federation must also be objective enough to assist the coach and not make the coach an issue. They must be able to own up to their decisions. They must be able to tell the nation and tell you, that is the point I'm contending, to tell the nation that why do we maintain the coach, why did we fire the coach? That is leadership. Leadership is not just getting a ticket to go and watch the World Cup and come back. No, it's about answering difficult questions about the very sport that you are a leader of. That is what is important. So there is no free ticket here and all of that. There's no point, and there is no period where the ANC have in fact been quite supportive and critical at the same time of the coach. Because our Secretary General, he was once a coach, but he never won anything in his life. But he's very knowledgeable about rugby, and he's got views about how rugby should have been played, what strategy the coach must have actually followed. As a citizen of the country and as a leader, we are proud to have such a Secretary General. You know, me as a Mbalula, I know a lot about all sporting codes, but I'm not like Secretary General free to say that you should have fielded this one, because my position is precarious. Some of you don't even know the team I support when it comes to football. I have to suffer inside. No, you can assume. My teams, it is Bafana, Springboks, and all of that. I've got no such liberty to just walk like everybody and say that, hey, my team has actually won. No, I must support national pride. I support national pride. If Orlando Pirates win Africa Championship, that is national pride. I must support Orlando Pirates. Yes. Not that I that is national pride. They represent us. And I must say, ladies and gentlemen, to conclude this batch of questions, that we don't feel attacked when people criticize the Springboks. We don't feel attacked when people criticize Bafana. No, we don't feel attacked, right? We think that they are an important mass. The day we say this great nation must stop to think, that's when we kill the nation. But allow us to manage issues within policy. Don't bring anarchy here. You know? At least this issue doesn't need anything beyond what we have actually addressed. Allow us to address issues within policy. Right? You have addressed your issues, we are attending to them. And SARU, we will police them to ensure that they are able to execute their mandate. There is no time to basically dig your head when we are confronted with an issue. We've got a lot of work to do next year to develop the Springboks, to contend and to go to the World Cup. Look at the Sevens. It's a fantastic bunch of winners, Sevens. They won at the Commonwealth Games. I was watching that game not at Glasgow, here in South Africa. What a good mix of team, you know. And the team was announced yesterday. They are going to the Olympics, Rio de Janeiro. We are going to Brazil. This coming weekend, get yourself tickets and make yourself favor. Go and watch them in Cape Town. Fantastic team. There's no debate whenever the Sevens are selected, who's black, who's white. Is there such a debate? No. All of those players are on merit. And some of them now have been promoted. They play for franchises. Kone is playing for franchises. Sinatla is the, you know, they normally even say that Sinatla is the next Brian Abana. You know. I'm just giving an example. So this is what we want in our team. That there is a coach who can see talent and he can field it, and then the guys can play. Not a thesis that is constructed on a racist connotation, that the Springboks can transform overnight and become something that we don't know. And all the good players must be left out because they are white. No, we don't subscribe to that position. We believe that we've got enough material and we must continue to develop. That is why I'm asking you to support me when I say support me to get more money to build infrastructure in South Africa for sport. And I'm getting that money now in government because the president have made a call that we must be given the money and support us to build infrastructure so that I'm able to take rugby and build and employ coaches and do all of that. I can't even employ coaches as a minister because I don't have those people. If ever we did not have economic challenges in our fiscus, and we want to compete with Australia, every school in South Africa must not be asking a federation. I must be asking the DG. Every school must be having a trainer, a nutritionist, and a sports person employed in my payroll. Now I must rely on some teachers who one day, if salaries are not okay, they do and they use that and all of that. I must rely on that. If the teachers are not coming to the party, sports, it's nowhere. Who's going to take sports to Zingi Zingi? It's me. I must get money to employ those teachers there, to teach kids how to play rugby, so that I can compete with Australia. Australia, if you look at them, they can be at the weakest, but they regroup very fast because they don't suffer from a problem of talent reorganization because the system is perfect. We don't have those resources. Yeah, in South Africa, if your father doesn't have money, forget. Or your mother, because you will go to the best schools because your father have seen talent in you to support you to go there. Yeah, in South Africa, if you go to a public school, and in the public school, the only thing that the school knows and plays is football. That's it. Even some of the universities now, and some of the schools, football is not played, it's banned. Kali called the deputy minister one time and said that he's got kids who are attending some Model C school in Pretoria, but kids are not allowed to play football in that school. White kids who are not allowed to play football in our own schools. I don't have a teacher, I don't have a coach in every school to teach these kids. Now, if I've got in my sports plan, read the sports plan. The sports plan is a fantastic document and a policy of government which is underfunded, which is unfunded, right? It says in the next 10 years, if we were to implement and then forget about the protest and the fees must fall and everything else, we will be far away. We can't leave fees must fall now. We've got kids who must be supported at school and then they must finish their degrees. We can't get more money and we are not going to get it very soon. But that is not a pretext for people not to transform. That is not a pretext for people not to field black players and say that there are no players in the system, kill them. So that is why we must introduce quotas and everything else at an organic level. So that this talent, it is there and then it is seen and so on. And young people are able to be selected to play for the national team. Yes.
Yes, I'm going to take another round of questions.
Well, we're talking 10 billion rand in the next 10 years, if you talk about holistically. But in terms of rugby in particular, I can't quantify in terms of grassroots support and so on, but 10 billion rand fully to implement the sports plan in the next 10 years will be what is actually required.
There's a question here.
Minister, still on transformation, one of the unions under the banner of transformation, and that was supported in terms of improving black rugby. The Kings are a union in disarray, players not being paid. That union was started, or was formed and improved, and that franchise, shall I say, was started so that black players can have a chance to play Super Rugby. They've received re-entry for next year's Super 18 competition, yet they've had financial problems and players have not been paid there. Are you aware of the problems that are occurring in the province of the Eastern Cape, and are you planning any sort of intervention?
No, I'm not going to intervene in the Eastern Cape because it is incorrect to say that that union was supported for the same reasons and yet it doesn't execute the same thing. Because the majority of the players who are playing even for the EP Kings are not African black. They are not. So to say that it was revived for that purpose, it is correct, but what it executes, it is not. It is just like any other franchise that mobilizes players and all of that. So I'm looking at the global picture, not only at the Eastern Cape. I'm looking at the global picture, and I'm happy with some of the franchises and the unions in terms of integrating and giving black players a space to play. I'm happy. There is progress, and most of the black players are there in the unions and they are given game time and they are being nurtured properly, right? At the present moment, if it was not because of that case, we will not even be seeing any of them at the present moment. So I'm not going to support something because people are having a noble idea that they can't execute, you see. And at the same time, I've put an academy there in the Eastern Cape, which I supported, 35 million. I must get an account of that 35 million. I'm coming to Chiki Watson and whoever who's involved with that. We are having an outstanding meeting to address that particular issue and to get a progress report. And when I call you again that I'm going to the Eastern Cape to get a report on the academy, you remember when I made noise about academy? I went there and I saw the money. The money, I saw it with my eyes. 35 million transferred from the Lotto to the Rugby Academy in the Eastern Cape. I need a report. I don't only need a report that will be given to me in the office. I want to see people. Where are these Rugby Academy players? Because they are cham napandikoy. Get transformation. Dikalelwa izinto ndikimali ye Lotto. Dingakimali ye Lotto mna. I mean, it can't even bury me that money, 35 million. You see, say khona kuzabe kushota amabhasi nekutya. I'm sure my funeral will be 100 million. So I want that 35 million that is being utilized for the academy. And where are those players of the academy today as we speak? So that if that academy is working for us, we can then go back, isn't it? And ask for more because it's working. So that is what I'm going to support. I support academies and anything that seeks to develop and nurture black players and to support them. In paper, that was fantastic. When we went to launch, it was integrated, it was good, and I'm not alleging anything because I've not received a comprehensive report. And before Chiki Watson gave me a call after this press conference that I attacked him, all what I'm saying is that I need a report, which we agreed that I'm going to get a report about that academy. So it's not an attack. And I'm neither accusing him of chowing any money and so on. I'm just saying he's a referral point for me. And then I went there to establish an academy with Mark Alexander and them. They are supposed to give me a report of the academy. There's no qualm. I'm not going to Tulima Donsela. I'm just asking for a report. Mina, I've been taken to Tulima Donsela for flight risk together with the deputy minister. That we are flight risk. You know, Sapuma's Chayapa. We are not flight risk. Yeah, 3 years ago that we didn't do anything wrong. So even them, I'm not taking them there. I'm just saying what happened to the academy because the people of the Eastern Cape, every time I go there, there is insinuation of this and that. So we just need the report so that when we get the report and we are happy the academy is performing very well, we'll be able. It is impossible to support something which is an idea, but but that particular idea have not found expression. So, the fact of the matter is that the Epikins is located right at the heart and soul of African black rugby talent development in the Eastern Cape. It must be supported. Yes, it is important, but I'm saying it's not only now that they are coming back, they were there, and I never saw these black people you are talking about. Unless if ninani babonile, and clarify namhlanje, mna zange ndababona ku Epikins. I only saw a lot of white players. For a franchise that it was said it was established for a noble cause of African black players, and I never saw them in that. But that is a noble idea that requires all of us to support it, if indeed it will achieve its own ideas that it has set for itself.
Thank you. I'll take this question in the front one there.
Pashkin Munde from ANN7. In your opinion, sir, if you're saying that SARU, you're saying that we have a national implementation plan, but your opinion on SARU, whether they're implementing that plan?
That plan, whether SARU is implementing it, it will actually be known in the next coming year in terms of that plan. But I can tell you now, I'm not in a position, having signed an agreement 18th of May, make a determination in November before I get the next report that they've implemented the plan. So I need to hold them accountable, and the EPG, that is its task. They must tell me next year. That is why the EPG, I'm strengthening it now in terms of the research capacity and all of that, to come to me and give me a report that in terms of your agreement, this is how far SARU has gone. And I must also be able not only to get the EPG report on paper, I must also be able to make practical evaluation of that report as a minister, that indeed this is happening. If it is not happening, I must be able to hold the SARU leadership accountable. They've signed an agreement with me. So I'm expecting them, not in 5 years down the line. Every year they must account how far they've gone in the implementation of that. And that will be reflected also in the composition of the national team, also in the composition of the lower structures and the coming in through the ranks of black players and African players and all of that. That must come to the party. We have been theorizing a lot. We are at the stage of implementation. We're no longer theorizing. And that is the point that we are at in terms of this plan and policy. So, where I am, I'm very clear about what I'm doing and what I want to achieve and the agreement we have actually signed and what we want to see going forward.
Okay, I'll take this question on transformation. Then I think the minister has answered fully on a lot of questions. Then I can give a chance for you to raise any other questions you would want to raise.
Minister Peter from Jacaranda FM, just looking at the next 5 to 10 years, as you mentioned earlier, apart from funding perhaps and organizations such as Solidarity, what are the kind of internal, perhaps even external challenges that your policies, your transformation policies specifically could face and not entirely fail perhaps, but make the process a little bit longer or more difficult?
The challenge that beckons with us is that we are a third world country, which is coming from a very, very, very sad process of racial segregation. And we are faced with a challenge where we've got competing priorities and competing for resources, and sport is not a priority. And yet there is so much expected out of sport to deliver. And that is the main thing. There's nothing that can surpass that. There's so much that is expected of us. And other people, when they speak, they think that those things can happen, in a spread of a second. And it is not the case. The fact of the matter is that the question of funding and our funding model is going to be a challenge for sport. And we need to continue to make a case for sport. Sport is critical, is the lifeblood of the nation. It can make us cease to do any other thing, And when sport is happening for us and the team wins, it is good for South Africa. It's good for the healthiness of this particular nation, for our own social cohesion and nation building. And that is what is important. So funding will always be a challenge. I would have told you now that I've got no reason not to realize the goals we have set ourselves within a very short space of time. In fact, going forward, because we've got this funding, right? We don't even get that in terms of the implementation. We are working out our own plans on the basis of the little that we actually have. And you can't ask for more. You can see even yourself in the competing priorities. Look at education and the demands that it comes with, you know. It will tell you that we are now confronted with the question of what is confronting us. Sports will need 10 billion rand to implement fully the whatever that we want to do, and it's impossible. It's impossible. But I think we can make a case that at least we can up our budget so that we are able to focus on development and do all these important things that we needed to do. Because let me tell you one thing, you can complain, you can do anything, but it's going to zero down to the schools. If those schools, public schools, are not going to assist us to inject talent into the system, we will see the drying up of talent. All these players that are there now, that are mushrooming, some of them in the next 5 years will not be there. Where is the talent going to come from? The system must reproduce. You see, the reason why there is skewed development is because the system of development is very consistent for a particular race group, which is advantaged in terms of resource capacity, and yet the other races are not advantaged. You see, so that is the case. If you want swimmers who are black in South Africa, it is not going to start when they are 15 years. We've got to focus on that. But look at swimming South Africa. Look at swimmers. It's an all-white team, and nobody has ever said, why are we blacks not part of the team? There's nobody who has raised that, because we know that we don't have that capacity. Because those players who are participating there, swimming is a very complicated and a difficult sport. You must start it at school, 6 years old to be exact. And it doesn't mean that the country cannot produce black swimmers. The question is, do we have the capacity to follow up and the resources to deepen transformation and to get black swimmers within the system? It's not easy. It's not easy because we need to ensure there is infrastructure, there are good pools, there's good coaches. You can have 15 pools in every location. The question when we have built a swimming pool is going to be, who's the coach in this swimming pool? The coach then is going to ask the question, who is the scout of this swimming pool to produce? Because those are interacted things that you must basically have. You must have a scout, you must have a coach. But it starts at school. Who sees these kids that they are talented? It's a primary school. These kids, when my daughter goes to a school, I will be told that she's not a good swimmer. Just make her to know how to swim for luxury, for leisure. But she can't be a talent for the country. The talent starts at school. It is the coaches at school that sees the kids. And then the coach starts to advise the parents that your child is good in swimming. Go and get him or her a coaching teacher, whatever, and so on. That's how it works. Charlotte Law's father says that I spent over 100,000 on this boy. It's time for me now to have fun, right? That's it, because there was no government for him. There was nothing. The old man went to work and then supported his child to be the best. But child's talent of swimming, they were seen at school. I was with John de Villiers before I came here. And so John de Villiers wouldn't have started as a rugby player, started as a cricketer, and then developed to become what he is. Who changed his lifestyle and saw that he can be a good rugby player? A school teacher, right? A school teacher who changed him to be what he is, and the parents invested. And then he will tell you that my father or my mother said I would have been a good swimmer, but my father saw these talents in me, right? Now, that's where it starts at the schools. So we must get it right, and the sports plan speaks to that. You can't compete with Australia, and because you see them having 18 gold medals, and then you think that you can do it overnight. It doesn't work like that. It is a system that is integrated. You see, when your child is seen in a school that has got talent, is actually referred to an academy. academy to be focused on, to swim, to be looked after. In South Africa, we don't have that. We think that going to high performance is for people who can eat, man, who've got teeth, you know, who can run already. They go to high performance, they train there, they can do all of those things. But the talent starts at school. It doesn't start at high performance. High performance, it is there for elite athletes and all of that, to look after them and so on, and what nutrition, whatever they need to follow, how to recuperate from injury and stuff like that from a scientific point of view. Talent starts at a younger age. So what confront us going forward is going to be the question of resources. But it cannot be, if we didn't have policy at all, that we cannot do certain things because we don't have resources. We can do a lot, and with what we have, and ensure that we are able to achieve, not maximum. That is why our policy doesn't say 60-40. Remember before, I raised the issue of 60-40. But we came back and reviewed that, because we can't expect 60-40 in the system in which it is not perfect. All what we want is to level the playing field. You can't say 60-40 everybody, but at the same time the system is not perfect. We've got to have to level the playing field in order to be able to achieve the maximum result. And then the 60-40 will come naturally out of the process of development on the grassroots level. Yes.
Okay, to be fair, we've had this press conference for quite a while now. I will only allow one question that is not about transformation, and please be thorough or be comprehensive so that you can ask for other people. Just one. Yeah. There's a hand there.
Minister Thando Kamane from SABC Sport. Just a word or two from obviously the sports recreation and obviously government on where it stands as far as FIFA and Tokyo Sexwale's campaign is concerned. We understand he's out of the country right now trying to campaign. A word or two on that, and obviously the thought and the hopeful wish that an African leader would once lead world football once again. Well, like for the first time.
Yes, I'll give it to Minister. Okay, I'll allow this one, last one.
Sorry, Minister, and just to add to that, Minister, have you had a chance maybe to speak to the Justice Minister on the correspondence that's been sent from the FBI with regards to the 2010 match fixing saga?
Well, let me address the FIFA issue. In government, we are talking and we are engaging each other since from the point when this FIFA issue has been addressed with us. So there's nothing that the Minister of Justice does without my knowledge or what I do that he doesn't know, first and foremost. And in June this year, the Americans furnished the minister based on their agreement bilateral between the two countries with the indictment. That indictment was already on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Vine, you know. Everybody has got that. So there's nothing new. It was just a document coming from an FBI attaché in Pretoria who said that in one long sentence, find attached the indictment. It's not a charge sheet. And when you go to Google now, FIFA, FBI, whatever indictment is the same thing. So just as a formality. And it happened after we complained that they should have recognized diplomatic relations between the two countries. Remember when I addressed you again, I said we will engage with the Americans through the diplomatic channels between the two countries. And then we will, what is it in English, invoke or revoke or whatever? Invoke the diplomatic relations between the two countries and engage with the Americans within the established channels. That's what we're doing. And that's what we are expecting them to do. You must understand, we've got no honors to prove ourselves that we bribed. We didn't bribe. The honors is on them. They went on national, international television and said that South Africa bribed 10 million rand or 10 million US dollars. And we explained how that 10 million US dollars was channeled from South Africa. We have no obligation to explain ourselves to them, right? But we had to explain because the matter was in the public discourse. And we had to explain to you and citizens that having satisfied ourselves of this 10 million rand and what happened to it, these are the facts about it. And nothing has changed from that. And we said that if the Americans want to do anything about this scandal or have got evidence that we don't have about this particular matter, they know what to do. Now, if they say that OG Molefe was carrying a suitcase in France and dancing like, what is that song of Lionel Rich, dancing on the sole of the shoe or something, on the ceiling with a briefcase. And then they will tell us about that particular issue that he's been dancing around Paris with a briefcase. And this is the point. We don't know that, right? And then we expect all of those protocols to be followed to the latter. And with regard to the issue, it has been explained by the Department of Justice. It was a question asked by the DA in Parliament. And the department addressed the issue. Yes, it is correct. The FBI did ask and furnished us with the indictment. So there's no charge sheet. In fact, if there is a charge sheet, they would have exhausted all the channels with everybody within the justice system in the Republic of South Africa. And when that has happened, those issues will be related to the public. So we have honestly been, transparent. We explained how the money was left the shores of, not even the shores, left the FIFA account to CONCACAF. And the fact that that was by direction and instruction of South African football authorities, executing the South African policy on the question of African renaissance and supporting Africans in the diaspora. In the government that was led by President Thabo Mbeki. We explained that. And there's nothing that has changed. And we have explained that the money left the account in Zurich and went to America to CONCACAF. And what happened to the money afterwards? We said to you, we can't account. But the money did not come from the fiscus. Immediately when I was in this platform and I explained that South Africa, there was no money from South African coffers and the treasury that was used of 10 million. They said that I'm denying. I did not deny. I said there's no 10 million that came from the fiscus. The money came from FIFA in the money that was destined for South Africa for football development post 2010 FIFA World Cup. And that money, we agreed in the context of our discussions with CONCACAF and FIFA and ourselves, that this particular amount of money will go for sport development, 120 million. And over 70 million US dollars was all over Africa, for football, for development in South Africa and in the African continent. Now, if in the process of that there are illegalities that actually happen, the Americans know what to say. Now, they went to the public and said that the South African government bribed based on their indictment. Now, in that indictment, which is public knowledge, accused number 1, referred to as co-conspirator number 1. Co-conspirator number 1 alleges that the 10 million, he understood it as a bribe. He doesn't even say it's a bribe. He says, accused number 1, co-conspirator number 1, Chuck Blazer. He alleges, he doesn't even allege, he says, he thinks, or from his slumber and dream, whatever that is thinking, that that thing was actually, and he confirms that the understanding of this money was for development, but in return, that money was a bribe disguised as a donation. That's how we understand it. Now, whether that is true or not, you must test it in a court of law. And that is the point. And we say we did not understand that to be a bribe. In fact, it was not a bribe. We are emphatic about it. And people ask, where was the decision taken? The decision was taken here in South Africa, and I explained that particular point. So I asked the media of South Africa really to be on guard, and I know you guys, because you want to associate this government with corruption, you have lost your objectivity on any other matter, you see. But if you are patriots, you will know that you also have an obligation to this country. Unless if you don't have an obligation to South Africa, you don't care about this nation, you see. You can't, at any given point, jump to the conclusion that this was true, and this is what has actually happened. And this is what is important to basically understand. As far as we are concerned, there is an investigation that is going on in America, and we are not in charge of the investigation. Most of the questions about the investigation must be channeled to the FBI, the CIA, or is it the CIA? FBI. They must be challenged to the FBI, whoever is investigating there, and to the Americans themselves. Now, I've never seen people who are accused being themselves who are able to clarify, we are investigated on these terms. It's not us, it is them who are investigating. And they must basically clarify. Neither can I clarify the question as to who's conspirator 15 or 16. And it is them who got an information. And that is the point. But we have clarified, in as far as being accused as a government that we bribed people, that is not true. We didn't bribe. And this actually occurred. If we are being called to explain and explain again, we'll do that. And we do have records, by the way, of how that bribe, the so-called alleged bribe, actually, money was actually transferred, and we do have those records. Money was transferred from this direction to that direction. Sorry, that was the slippery of the tongue. Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. And unfortunately, I would apologize to you guys. We won't have an opportunity for one-on-one. It would not be fair on the Minister because he said a lot of things. And I think from what he said already, you would probably ask again and you'd get the same answer. Thank you for coming today. And hopefully that in the next press conference that isn't about transformation, I'll see the same number of journalists. Thank you.